Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Hello, welcome to another episode of Harvesting Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Mike McMahon. Today I have with me Riley Casey with Van Dyke Recycling Systems. And I'd love to have you on the podcast here, because I saw you, I think, last at the U.S. Compost Show that was here in Arizona. I was based in Arizona this year, and saw some of your equipment, and I'm dreaming of the day when I can have some of it for what we do. So tell me a little about your background, Riley. How did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, Mike, you'll see me at a lot of shows. I'm one of the younger guys at Van Dyke, so I'm spread pretty wide. I go, you name the conference, I'm there. Love to get our message out there. I started with Van Dyke about 4 years ago. Have a sales background and always been a problem solver, and now that's all I do at Van Dyke is solve problems. So we have a great team, technical guys, engineering team, design team. You have a problem, we have the equipment to solve it.
Okay. And so, I'm a composter. And being a composter, that's there's a lot of different composters, right? Depends on what you're composting. That's a big part of it. Do you guys handle all kinds of equipment, or do you handle equipment for certain? You do. I know you're in the food space. Is that your primary integration? Is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, Van Dyke's core business is building single stream MRFs. We have dozens and dozens of facilities across North America that we've designed, built, and then provide after-sales support for. Those same customers over the last few years have transitioned into handling food waste, and we kind of saw that coming with what was happening in Europe. So we became really prepared, developed a suite of solutions for people like yourself, and now we can handle food waste as well. So really our specialty in food waste would be the products that you have the hardest time with, things that's still in the packaging, or things that you might not be able to access those organics other than using heavy equipment or automation or high amounts of labor. So that's where kind of our specialty is in food waste.
So when we look at food, when we look at anything, the question is, what are we doing? We're diverting waste products, right? And the two inputs of this are either compost or it is a food additive or part of a food blend for animal feed, right? So how do you differentiate? I mean, tell me about your different product line, because it's I've seen your stuff and it's really, I think maybe you're the king of the industry or the top of what you do, and some of the stuff kind of blows me away how it even works. So walk through maybe a little bit of the product line and exactly how you're doing this stuff.
Yeah, we'd certainly like to think we're the best, right? We have the highest quality equipment, the best service and support, and that's really important. That product doesn't stop coming to people like yourself, right? So you can't have your equipment be unreliable. And like you mentioned, the two real main sectors right now where that food waste is going is to compost, animal feed, but also there's a third, and it's anaerobic digestion. So people are using the gases basically from that waste. It's like a big stomach. They're producing energy with it at the end of the day. So these are things that have been happening in Europe for the last 10, 15, 20 years, and that's really what we've built our business on. We see what happens in Europe as a country, and then very slowly the United States starts to adapt to what they're doing. And for the same reasons, we run out of landfill space, we need to increase diversion, then we want to increase diversion in places where we still have space. So that's kind of where we're at, and Van Dyke has always been at the forefront of that.
And we find the end products are actually pretty good. I mean, the compost is essential to a better soil. And you mentioned the bio. I didn't realize you guys were into the creating the biofuels, the digesters. We've done some of that in Africa. in some of our projects for our nonprofit. But and why that's so important is they're taking compost that, readily available waste, and they have a bunch of different systems. So we have bag systems and we all kinds of things, but they literally are fueling like the kitchens. So their stoves and their cook stoves and even some of the heating and things they have. So it's great because they're using the waste, and they have it's actually a fairly simple setup. None of your stuff is super simple, but so let's go one product line at a time. Let's talk about that. And I didn't realize that was how much that is being used now in the States. It's kind of a new thing, right?
Yeah.
And so who your primary end users for that?
Yeah, so it varies a little bit differently. Van Dyke specializes in the front end processing. So our system stays relatively the same. Sometimes our goals change by what that product needs to look like by the end. So in simplest terms, we take that product, we'll depackage it, remove anything that's non-organic, and then our client or customer can say, we need this more wet, we need this more dry. We can only put certain materials in this. And then we have a variation of post-processing equipment, we call it, that we can set up along with that initial depackager.
Okay.
One of the biggest advantages of working with Van Dyke is that you get everything from us in that front end, but at the same time, your level of automation is very high. We have a site in California. The truck backs right up to the ramp and just dumps right into our bunker. There's no pre-sorting.
Right.
There's no need to dump on a floor and make a big mess and have the truck tires get all dirty and drive that all around. Dumps right into the bunker, goes right in the machine. You have your packaging and your organic materials. So.
And that machine, hard to visualize. I'm sure we'll pop it out to the podcast while we're doing this thing. But that machine is, when I first saw it at the first compost show a few years ago, I was like, that can't work. Like, how does that even? And then I thought, if I buy that, and it's not a cheap machine, but if I buy that, I'm going to have a mechanic out there every week, because that's got to be like crazy. And then the other thing I thought is, okay, I've seen a can of soup, get hot and blow up, and it literally is like a little bomb. You guys are taking full pallets of things, and some of that product inside those pallets are probably totally edible, but they've hit expiration dates, and it could be anything, right? Cans of corn, or it could be whatever that you've got, and you got full pallets of it, and you dump it into this thing. And how do you keep that? I don't even understand how the entire pallet of this, and you're literally blowing up everything in there. How does it not, like, the entire machine not blow up and take out a city block? I don't even understand that. So, and then how does it not break down with that kind of explosive energy and the teeth to do it? So to talk a little about that machine, because it's a really cool machine.
You make it sound like magic and impossible, but I can assure you it's not impossible. It really comes down to, obviously, the durability of a machine like that. You know what it's going to go through. And we work with a company called Smecon. They're actually the manufacturer of that product, and they were an operator before they were a manufacturer. So when you work with somebody who's developed a machine or a piece of equipment that actually had to use something like that previously, you can tell. If you've ever done an oil change in your own car or fixed things around the house, you're like, the guy who designed this never thought about having to fix it.
Right.
And with our equipment, and it really goes for everything we sell, is everything is very well thought out. And if you do have to do maintenance, it's predictable. We have the parts in stock, and we have service guys that can answer the phone for you. So all of that part of the case there, Van Dyke is excellent at. When it comes to the actual machine and how it works, you can sort materials by a few different ways. It's density, 2D or 3D, right? Whether it's flat or three-dimensional. There's a couple other ways to sort material, but how we sort it in depackaging is we want to be gentle in the fact that we break open these packaging and get the organics out, but we don't want to shatter that packaging to a million pieces. What that allows us to do is use very fine screen holes, so that way the organics can sneak through, and then the packaging stays large and it comes out the other end. So it is kind of a mad science. It's not quite magic, but that's essentially how it works.
So you get a pallet. Let's say you get a pallet. Everybody's seen a pallet. And you got stacked. I worked as a kid in a grocery store. stocking shelves. On that pallet, you have boxes. In the boxes, you have cans. Outside of the whole thing, you've got wrapping material.
Yep.
And you got the pallet itself. So as that stuff comes in, what's the process? You want to get pallet out of there, right? You don't want the wood. So you take, is that right? And do you have to cut open the plastic, or do you just take it and you drop it into your bin? So walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, that's one of the ways that materials can come in, is palletized from a producer that maybe had a recall, or the product needs to be destroyed because the label is wrong. Whatever it may be, the manufacturer of that is sending it to be diverted and is being responsible with that product. So that happens at some of our sites. It comes down to an operator preference. Sometimes they want to capture that film. That can actually be turned into a biofuel. So there's a good value to that at some places. And the labor to do that is expensive, right? So it makes sense to have a commodity for it afterwards. The same goes for the cardboard. That cardboard is a valuable commodity in a lot of places in the country, and the labor to take that off is somewhat expensive. So
are there any robotic tools for taking the plastic off or the cardboard out, or not? Something in development?
One of my favorite parts about this job is when you go to one of these plants, you can see the evolution of somebody who's been working there for weeks or months or years, and what they do with a set of tools. And it looks like they are a robot, and how efficiently they can take cans out of a box and they drop it on this special curb that they know will break the box open. So that's typically more of what you see in those. It is a very labor intensive if you're gathering those to be a commodity. The reason for that is if you break those soup cans over and they wet the cardboard or wet the film, then it diminishes the value of those, right? So it's not necessary that you need to do those things. Like I said, it's a preference. All of that can go into our machine. And again, it's going to smack open those cans we have a shaft. It has hammers on it. It spins at a good RPM. It's breaking those open constantly. So that's where that organic escapes. And again, because we can use fine screen holes, the organics sneak through that screen hole, and the packaging just doesn't.
So you're trying, in a perfect world, the film comes off, the cardboard comes off, the food comes out, and then you have cans. And most of the cans are aluminum, right? So totally recyclable.
Absolutely.
And cost effective to recycle. So how do you do when, let's say I'm doing it all together though. Now I've got my cardboard, my cans, and my plastic still on it. Well, what's the process there of separating? Are there magnets of some sort that you're separating the cans out? Because that's the most valuable at that point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have, with our background in building material recovery facilities, we have a full suite of equipment that can sort pretty much any material you can imagine. Right. So we could send that packaging out on a conveyor belt and use optical sorters, eddy currents, and basically separate all of those commodities afterward. Just keep in mind, it's a little bit more difficult to clean them, and you'll see a diminished value thereafter. So,
but if I'm using the cardboard, for instance, if I separate the cans out, boom, there, that goes. Maybe I do take the time to take the plastic off. Yeah. But now I get cardboard. Even if that cardboard's wet or whatever it may be, you probably have some solutions for taking and shredding that I can blend that in with my compost, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's
shredders and grinders. And
it's always that logistics, what makes most sense profit-wise, Obviously, we want to recycle reuse every piece, but sometimes the labor maybe is too much, and we want it, but we still want to use that product for something, and so that's the case. So we in my company at Soil Seed Water, we do composting with dairy product, and then we end up doing a lot of blending with a lot of organics. We turn our dairy product into worm castings. So we have a huge vermicompost operation. And through the landscape company that I have, we get lots of wood chips, clean wood fiber. And again, we'll either sell that as a premium product, but we also will take that and blend a lot of that stuff. So we're using different equipment. What we haven't done is, and what we are starting to do now, is to get into that food space. Mm-hmm. And so now, let's say a company like mine, and of course, because you're on the podcast, I get an 80% discount on everything.
We'll work it out.
The dream equipment, right? So, but we're starting, and I know that's a critical piece of the equipment. So as a composter, but somebody who's kind of a virgin at, and we've got a guy now who's one of the best guys in the industry coming, so he's not a complete virgin. But let's just say I am, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? How do I get it? You guys come out and you'll bring the equipment out, help install it, and then you train people how to use it and give us options on it. So tell me about that process a little bit, because you've done it for lots of clients, right?
Yeah.
And do you also show them metrics for what their production rates should be and when they should be servicing? Tell me about that, because that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it takes a lot out of the equation when somebody can tell you all of those things, right? Because you're already worrying about so much.
Sure.
The last thing you want to do is guess when this needs maintenance and try to figure things out on your own. So, yeah, I mean, you're pretty much spot on. What we'll do is we'll come in and say, okay, what is your feedstock? What is your anticipated feedstock? Is this going to grow in the next year or two? Do you want something that you can grow into, something that's modular? There's a lot of things that we try to figure out before even getting to the design stage.
Right. So in an ideal world, I don't pay for every bell and whistle until I'm ready for it.
Exactly.
And we talk about, what the ideal outcome is.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So how long a process is that? And do you find that most of your clients, once they start with phase one, they just keep buying and building because the automation is profitable, right?
I would tend to say yes, absolutely, especially in the single stream side of the business. Toward food waste, it's a little tricky sometimes because you may think that you have 5 years worth of this product coming in, and all of a sudden, that product's going somewhere else, and you were relying on that for your business.
Yeah, right. So, stream ends.
Yeah, so that could be a little bit difficult. So it's best to design a system that can be used as a Swiss Army knife. You can use it for food waste. You can use it to make a slurry that can go to a number of different things. So we take all that account. We do our best to advise our customers and, hey, this person was also thinking that. Here's what you should think about. So it's really a team effort to design and build a system. Nothing we offer is like a standard copy and paste. Everything we do is custom made for you specifically.
However, clients are clients, and you do have certain categories of clients, right? So hey, this worked over here, and we think it would work for you over here. So you have that ability to tell us that. With the so we talked a little about that crusher, which is a magical thing, and it really is a game changer for the industry, because up until now, people just took that and they landfilled the entire pallet.
Yeah.
So wood and all, plastic and all, boxes and all, and then all the cans, and then the food inside of it. How long would that sit in a landfill and take to biodegrade? 1,000 years? I mean, so now that can be eliminated, but there's profit involved. There's all of these products are being reused. And the biggest part of making it, to me, in all the industries I'm involved with, it's reducing labor, because labor is a big variable it's hard to predict, right? So your systems allow you to do that. So you've got that crusher and you've got this assembly line. Part of the cool part is you're not taking up a huge footprint. So when we compost, we've probably got somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 acres. We're windrowing out there. Lots of parts of the world you can't do that, and we're out in the desert, so we have more space where we're operating. But that's kind of a luxury in most places. Your stuff takes up, typically, depending on how big the line is, but how small a space sometimes do you operate with?
Yeah, it really depends on what the goals are of that system. Sometimes whatever that organic is being produced for is on that site. Sometimes you're just producing the organic, right? You're depackaging, and then the organic's being somewhere else. So if that were the
case, somewhere else, yeah.
Right, yeah. Whether it's for compost again, or digestion, or you're mixing to make animal feed to find the right nutrients in there. If that happens off-site, I mean, you can do something not much larger than this room. So it can be a very compact process. But we also have sites where the bunker alone is bigger than this room, right? And they're doing 20 tons an hour, 18 hours around the clock.
Yeah.
So yeah, it all depends on how much you're taking in, what you're taking in, and what your goals are at the end. But again, our systems are modular. So if you need it to fit in the space, we're going to do our best to make it fit in there. There's a good chance that it'll fit. It just might look a little funky, but it'll work.
Yeah. So we're talking about this crusher. We talked about the digester a little, and the fact that it produces some usable gases for energy production, right? But talk about the slurry concept. You mentioned that. I've seen the machine. It's another machine. If I remember right, it was a different machine. It was an add-on machine that you can have. What and why would you slurry anything?
So the slurry refers to the organic product that comes out. What goes in generally comes out in terms of liquid percentage. If you have a really wet infeed like soup, or it's just mixed in and rained on, that's generally what your product is going to be coming out. Now, sometimes the product coming in will be very dry, and then 2 hours later, you'll have a really wet load. So we'll kind of mix that together in our bunkers to make a homogeneous slurry, we call it. From there, we can take out microfines like glass or very small parts of plastic to take those pieces out, specifically glass, shells, bones. The liquid percentage does need to be pretty high, where we call it a slurry. It's like a big, disgusting milkshake, pretty much.
Right.
But if your product goes in dry, it comes out pretty dry.
So, you want at some point there's always an end product percentage of moisture that you're looking for, right?
Right.
Especially if you're moving or loading it, you don't want, as you're driving a truck away, you don't want things spilling all over the freeway, right? So, I guess we're talking about that process of eliminating the plastics. How do you do that? Is that through a screen or through some kind of microwave? How do you metals you can magnetize, but how do you take plastics and does it float up there, or how does that work?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways. Again, largely depends on what those look like going in. Our machine itself, like I mentioned earlier, the way that it's designed is that it's a lower RPM than some of the other machines out there. What that does is keep the packaging really large, and it doesn't sneak through the screens. Some machines out there will just obliterate anything that goes in,
and then
shatters that plastic, and then you have those pieces sneaking through, and they end up in your slurry. So it's not as pure.
Right.
We can make a slurry as pure as 99.5% with only our depackager. That's not including any of the post-processing that we have to offer.
Okay.
So when you talk about animal feed, that's where that's really important. We can't have...
The post-processing is critical.
Yeah.
So now you got the slurry, it comes out. How do you post-process? What machines do that?
Yeah, so we have a number of different ones. I mentioned the one for shells and bones. It's basically like a bucket, and it sits on an angle, and it's got grooves on the inside. And very slowly it spins, and the liquids will go toward the back, and all the fines will get carried up toward the front and then drop out into a bin. And we can send a video to show on the screen. It's a really, really neat but simple idea. It gets about 90% of those microfines, shells, bones, things like that out of your slurry.
So you've already got it. You've removed a lot to begin with. Now you're taking out, a large percentage of what little went in.
Yeah, and glass is a huge problem for a lot of our customers. So
glass
this is
is
a
a
really
problem
nice.
for everybody.
Yeah, and you either get it out at the very end using density separation, or you can throw this in kind of in the middle, and then your cleanup at the end is a lot less, which is really nice.
Okay.
No matter what you're using it for.
So now for compost, even with compost, Farmers USDA is not real thrilled with having glass out there or plastics or any other contaminants out as you're putting it back into the field. And I've read a bunch about glass, and technically glass in some instances isn't horrible for farming until it gets excessive, because part of it is it does take a long time to biodegrade, but it also can become a bulking agent, and there's some advantage, but basically none of us want it because the end user pretty much doesn't want it, right? So as you're following through your process and you're eliminating this stuff, you've got most of that stuff eliminated through the secondary processing. What is the specification for? Is there any kind of, because it's kind of a new thing in the U.S. and animal feed is not technically monitored as like it would be for human consumption, right? So what are the protocols for that animal feed? I'm sure there's plenty of regulations, and why do you need some of that equipment to meet those regulations?
Yeah, that's actually one of the first questions we ask our customers when they are telling us that the end goal of these pre-processing is for animal feed. We're like, okay, well, what's going in? What can't be coming out? Then we kind of take it from there. So that's answered a lot of time by our customers, and we just kind of follow suit with that. And there are some times where we say, hey, you know, our equipment is not capable of doing that, but if you take out this one thing out of your feedstock that goes in the machine, no problem, then we can do it from there. So we kind of help them analyze that and tell them what the capabilities are of our equipment. For example, glass would probably be one of those. We'd say, you know what, we can get a lot of it out more than anyone else, but we'd recommend that you don't put it in there, because if your chicken or your cow or your pig start eating glass, you know, it's probably not going to be good. So
No.
cleaning wise is a big thing too, right? Some of the markets actually are very strict on what can be fed to the animals.
Right.
So if you throw Nesquik chocolate milk in your machine one day and the next day you're hoping for a very clean output, you're going to have to do quite a bit of scrubbing to get all the Nesquik out of there. So yeah, we can help assess those capabilities and make sure that what your goal is accomplished.
And you have some kind of cleaning systems, or at least a process that you walk people through if you have to, you know, spray some kind of Clorox bleach in their water or whatever, jets. I know with a lot of the trucks that we use for hauling, they have sprinklers built into them, so that when we're done with the load, they wash themselves out. So that's, and I don't, do you have any kind of things that are like sophisticated like that?
Yeah, the system itself actually has nozzles on the top, so it's constantly has the ability to spray water in there to clean the screen off as it goes. So the system itself will stay relatively clean. You're not going to have to get in there and actually do any scrubbing. You would only do that in the instance that you didn't want whatever was in the day before to be in your batch for the next day. So that's a little tricky with the animal feed kind of things.
Van Dyke started in Connecticut?
Yeah.
And how long has Van Dyke been doing this? Were they originally composters, or what were they? How did they, or machine people, or how did that all start?
Yeah, so Van Dyke was started by Peter Van Dyke in the 1980s, early 1980s. Peter was doing a college research project on balers. So basically to pack up the cardboard, the aluminum, all those kind of things. And he was doing a market study on the United States. So he came over, did the market study as part of his project. And while he was here, he was like, this is actually a really good market. So we partnered with Bolograph, who is the Cadillac of balers to this day. Steven still from the 1980s. He sold his first baler, and he realized quickly that he would need parts and support and service. So he started keeping the parts underneath his bed in his New York City apartment.
That was he was in New York when he started.
He was in New York City, yeah. So that was our spare parts department, was the underside of Peter's bed. Wow. Through the years, we sold a bunch more balers. Peter added more to the team, and we basically built our business on seeing what, again, Europe was doing, and then knowing that it was going to come here 10 to 15 years later.
So he was from Europe, from Amsterdam, or from the Dutch. The Dutch always are like the best at this stuff, right? It's just, you can't get around it. You know, they're
great
really
engineers.
they're great agriculture technology people. So he started that. He's in New York City, not a place that I would normally associate with food waste reduction or anything. But and then he needed some space, so he moved over. What part of Connecticut? My mother's from Connecticut. My brother lives there. I spent a lot of time growing up. What part of Connecticut are you in?
Yeah, I'm actually from there originally as well.
Oh, you're from there?
Yeah, I grew up there. But our headquarters is in Norwalk, Connecticut. We have a massive headquarters. We stock over $36 million in spare parts there.
Wow.
You can build, I don't know how many systems out of the spare parts that we have there. And we do that because we take a lot of that technology to this day from Europe. We bring it over here, and then we support it as if it was built in your backyard. Wow. It's a huge competitive advantage for us.
And now you're nationwide?
Yeah, worldwide.
Worldwide?
Oh. Worldwide.
Okay. And you handle what part? The Arizona market, the Southwest, or?
Yeah, personally, I handle the Southwest. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm at shows all over the place. If one of our more experienced guys is busy, I'm happy to go wherever and help him out. I did a lot of flights last year.
And so you have this stuff available. How long does it take if I ordered a system for me to have it sitting in my facility?
It's tough to say without knowing what you'd order, because everything is all custom made, like I said earlier too.
Right.
The design process itself can take weeks to months. A lot of times we find and uncover questions that haven't been answered by someone like yourself yet, and that takes time to kind of uncover. So yeah, weeks to months. It's pretty standard that we start with somebody, and within 12 months they have an operational facility, and so
And the machines are run, do you have them versatile to run on a diesel or on, if they're electric, are they three-phase electric or are they 110 or how do you, all of the above?
Yeah, so for our depackaging equipment, it does run on three-phase 240 volt.
Okay.
We have developed a mobile unit where you'd be able to put it on a trailer and then drive it to a site to do 10, 15, 20 tons an hour.
That would be diesel run.
It's still electric, so we can either supply a generator with it, help you find a generator, or potentially wire in to that site while you're there if you're going to be there for an extended period of time.
Okay.
But one of the biggest problems with setting up these sites is permitting. So by having a mobile unit, you get to avoid a lot of the permitting.
Yeah.
So it's a huge benefit for some of our customers that are looking for some other options to set up these sites to grow their operations.
So great question, permitting, right? So I have a landscape company. I put in playgrounds in Maricopa County. I can take the same Ramada and each city or municipality I go to, I got to get a different permit. It drives me crazy. Like, why can't we standardize? But you guys are worldwide. So do you do the permitting or do I have to do the permitting? And who do I permit with? Do I ADQ? Do I do it with USDA? I mean, who am I? The city, the municipality? I wouldn't even know where to start. So you've got part of that is your services to help navigate that too?
Not quite, but you can imagine how bad does a playground smell? Not that bad. How bad does a food waste depackaging operation smell? Pretty bad, right? So it's a way more in-depth process.
Okay.
And that's all some projects that we work on, but we're with our customers every step of the way. We've been doing this for 40 years, so we have phenomenal contacts that are consultants or that have built these facilities and they're retired and they eat, sleep, and breathe it. So they're happy to share their information, what they've learned. We're a great resource all around, not just in designing your plant. We can help connect you with people who can help with that. So
now, did the boys at Arizona Compost Council recruit you? Are you part of that council now?
Yeah, we are a founding sponsor of the Arizona Compost Council.
Okay, great.
So
and I met
down
down in Tucson, one of the other founding, well, actually he's not, he was a consultant for us, right? And not him, but his father had a system, industrial system for taking the smells out of the facility. So do you ever partner with groups like that or just to say, hey, Mike, you're right in an area where you're going to get complaints. You should go and look at that stuff?
Yeah, so we actually have a partner. They're called Air. We can install them in it's got to be an enclosed building, of course. We do all kinds of calculations to calculate the back pressure. And then we use what's called cold ox. And cold ox is a little bit different than a biofilter, but more effective, takes up less space, and is far less maintenance. So we can install that. You could have a food depackaging in somebody's neighborhood, and they never even know it's there if you had Air installed. So yeah, we can support that as well.
That's really cool. So yeah, the sophistication behind what you have is crazy. But it really, for people who are watching this, the solutions are there. We have the ability to depackage, separate out the products into a stream where they can be recycled, whether it's composted or animal feed. Great adherence to regulation and processes so that you ensure that you have a safe feed, and the process is great. Not the cheapest thing in the world. It's not for everybody, but it's a great solution. I hope to be part of that solution at some point, one of the dreams, but maybe we'll have you on as we're installing, and then I can complain, how come it's not in, and why does it cost so much money? But I appreciate you coming here today, Riley Casey with Van Dyke, and appreciate everything you're doing and the great work you're doing with the Arizona Compost Council as well. And thank you again for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike.
Okay. Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Click subscribe and like for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for show notes and additional resources. Visit our guests' webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey, and until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.